Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. Ki mimini bo lehemot. Lachen samach libi vayagel kavodi. Af bisari yishkon lavetach. Ki lo ta'azov nafshi lishol. Lo titen chastecha lerot shachat. Todieni orachayim. Orachayim. Sovasemachot et panecha. Ni'imot bemincha netzach. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. Ki mimini bo lehemot.
Thank you, Greg, for that beautiful music, and thank you, Cantor. It feels so appropriate for us to be gathered in this space because Dan loved Temple Beth Shalom, and he and his family are such a presence here. This is a place that he loved. It is a place that was enriched by his presence, and it's a place where the Nixons hold such an important role. When I spoke to Rabbi Glickstein to tell him of Dan's passing, he shared with me that when he and Joni first moved to Miami, that they stayed for 2 weeks in your home. And that's so emblematic of your family and how warmly they were welcomed. And I know the Glicksteins, along with so many others, are live streaming this service. And though by necessity so few of us are here, the space is filled with the love of all of you who are live streaming and who are sending comfort to the family. So thank you. For Dan's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness to us. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. And so I share first the words of the 23rd Psalm. Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yinachaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'magle tzedek l'ma'an shemo, gam ki elech begeit salmavet, lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha, hema yinachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yurdafuni kol yemei chayai, v'shafti beveit Adonai le'orach yamim. Just a few days ago, we all stood around Dan's bed and said those words, and I know they brought comfort to the family. We're taught in these words of the 23rd Psalm that as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that we are not alone, but that God is with us. And today I hope you all feel everybody who loves you with you as well, and that brings you a measure of comfort. And so if you know the words to the 23rd Psalm in English, I invite you to please recite them with me at this time. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And now we read a poem written by Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude and pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. On the campus of Dartmouth College, in front of the library, stands a tall and stately tree with a dedicatory plaque at its base for Daniel Nixon. And the plaque reads, "Ardent gardener, compassionate healer, eternal optimist." The tree, a gift from his children on the occasion of a recent birthday, was a fitting tribute to a man who was like a tree himself, tall, dignified, and stately, but with a sharp bow tie and snazzy socks that many of you are wearing here today. Knowing how well he loved gardening and trees and his beloved alma mater, Dartmouth, the tree is a living legacy that will long endure, just as Dan's memory is engraved on all of our hearts. A passage from the Psalms proclaims, "Tzaddik katamar yifrach," the righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. This statement speaks volumes about Dan, a tzaddik, a righteous man who flourished in his life not only like a tamar, a palm tree, but with and through a tamar, his beloved wife, Tamara. Volumes could be said about Dan, or Dr. Dan, as he was lovingly known. Yet, as his children said in his obituary, he lived a life that was way too large for this. So today, despite the inadequacy of time or words, we'll try to capture the beauty and the impact of Dan's long and meaningful life. Dan was born in Los Angeles and grew up with his younger brother, Harvey. Legend has it that the family changed their last name from Abramowitz to Nixon when his father bought a cap store in Los Angeles that was called Nixon's. And it turned out to be cheaper and easier to change their last name than to change the name of the shop, and thus the Nixon family was born. After his bar mitzvah, Dan's family moved back to Newcastle, Pennsylvania, where much of his family lived. When it was time for Dan to go to college, his mother looked up Dartmouth in the encyclopedia and decided he should apply there. Thus, his enduring relationship with Dartmouth was born. And at Dartmouth, he made lifelong friends. And since he loved to read and write, he was surprisingly an English major. And he didn't come to his interest in medical studies until toward the end of his career at Dartmouth. And so during the summer after college, when he was working at his father's meatpacking plant, he got word that the University of Pittsburgh had accepted him to medical school. That was a monumental summer for Dan, because not only did his dream of becoming a doctor become a distinct possibility, he also first set eyes on the love of his life and best friend, Tamara. After college graduation, he vacationed in Miami with a few of his best buddies and saw the beautiful Tamara at the Nautilus Hotel swimming pool. And though she dazzled him with her brains and her beauty, since she was only 17 years old and first heading to Wellesley College herself, he decided that she was too young for him, and he let her go. A year later, realizing the foolish error of his ways, he managed to track her down through the hotel manager at the Nautilus Hotel. And the rest, as they say, is history. After 4 years of separation and many a love letter written, Tamara graduated from college on a Monday. Dan graduated from medical school on a Wednesday. Their rehearsal dinner was Friday, and their wedding was 2 days later on a Sunday. And they were inseparable for the next 65 years, traveling hither and yon for internships, residency, the Army, first jobs, and family. Tamara told me that they moved 13 times in their first 9 years together, from Long Island to Fort Sam in Texas, Fort Ord in Monterey. Then Dan went to Cameron Bay, where he saw malaria patients for the first time in his life, and finally to Cu Chi, Vietnam, where he lived the reality of the fictional TV show MASH. After the Army, Dan's interest in hematology and oncology grew, as well as his determination to be a compassionate caregiver. He joined a small group of oncologists in Miami, where he spent the rest of his career, lucky for us. He became chief of hematology oncology at Mount Sinai Hospital and touched countless lives of both fellow physicians for whom he was a role model and his beloved patients, many of whose lives he saved or prolonged significantly. He cared about his patients and took a genuine interest in their lives. As one doctor wrote to Naomi, "One of my favorite stories about your dad was my first tumor board at Mount Sinai in 1995. I thought I was a hotshot doctor from Sloan Kettering, and I quoted the standard of care to him. He turned to me and said, 'Young lady, that may be what the book said, but you must take into consideration each patient as an individual, evaluate and consider who they are and their special circumstances as a person. They are not just their diagnosis.'" Dan was truly a pioneer in the compassionate care movement and was the first medical director of Vitas Hospice. I first knew Dan as a devoted member of Temple Beth Shalom, where Tamara had grown up, but came to know him in a new way when he invited me to be a facilitator for the Schwartz Rounds, a program which he initiated at Mount Sinai Hospital in order to create space for caregivers to share their vulnerability, real concept for doctors, share their vulnerability and discuss the frustrations and struggles of compassionate care. I was so deeply touched that he chose me, that he believed in me as a young rabbi for this prominent role with an esteemed group of physicians. And despite being out of my element, I was so anxious to please him and to help make the program a success. While his career meant so much to him, nothing was more central to his life than his family, all of you. Through their 13 homes in 9 years, somehow Dan and Tamara managed to bring 3 children into the world, Asa, Naomi, and Victoria. And Dan quelled for each one of you and your accomplishments and was beloved by your spouses, Greg and Odile, and Ruthie too. He was a devoted son to his mother, who I even got to know, Sarah. And so I'm going to call up now his 3 dear children to share some intimate reflections and memories with all of you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Gail, Cantor Siegel, and to my husband, Greg, who played the beautiful music on the viola. He had such a special relationship with my dad, and I know my dad would have loved that you did that. I'm Naomi, and I'm here with my brother, Asa, and sister, Victoria, and I'm sharing the remarks at the beginning that we wrote together. Yesterday morning, Dad died peacefully at home, surrounded by his family, both in person and remote. We hugged and kissed him, held his hand, sang songs and told stories. We laughed, we cried, we said prayers, and we were together. It was as perfect as it gets when you are saying goodbye to the dad you adore. Family was the most important thing to my dad. He celebrated each of our individual strengths and cavilled at each one of his 7 grandchildren's successes in Miami and Boston. Our parents came of age during Broadway's heyday. We grew up listening to show tunes at the dinner table. Dad had a favorite quote from Pippin: "It's smarter to be lucky than it's lucky to be smart." Clearly, his luckiest moment was meeting Mom at the swimming pool of the Nautilus Hotel in the summer of 1955. And the smartest thing he ever did was marrying her.
Mom and Dad completed each other's circle. They complemented each other perfectly, and they were a spectacular package as parents. We always knew how lucky we were. Mom, thank you for being so extraordinarily strong and devoted to Dad these past few years. You carried on when others would have given up and made it possible to have many more quality years together. Dad adored you. Even when he lost much of his strength, he still reserved the most beautiful smile for you. He was your best friend and your soulmate. As children, Dad shaped us all. It's no coincidence that everyone knew in 3rd grade that I was going to become a doctor. Another example, to this day, when any of the 3 of us say yeah, we immediately follow it with "s." He was very particular about saying yes and not yeah. Dad was the sweetest, kindest, most compassionate person ever. He was the person that you'd call on for really good advice on problems big or small, and we're going to miss that tremendously. Dad believed in hard work. It was okay if you didn't bring home A's as long as you gave it your best effort. Not many people know, until recently when the rabbi sort of preempted us, that Dad was an English major at Dartmouth. Initially, he wasn't a strong science student. I remember him telling us about the D that he got in chemistry, a class that he desperately needed to pass in order to go on to medical school. He struggled mightily with the subject, and it was only because his professor took pity on him that he did not fail. He was lucky. From there, Dad went on to the University of Pittsburgh Medical School and eventually completed his medical and oncology training in New York. He became a beloved and accomplished doctor who impacted thousands of patients, their families, and the physicians he worked alongside. As children, we heard his stories, and it gave us the freedom to work hard, to do our best, and always feel that we could be successful in the end.
Dad was known for his sense of humor, which was witty, warm, and sometimes mischievous. We've all experienced that sense of mirth. Like the time he took Grandma Sally out for her first ride in his brand new Camaro. It was the first car we had where you didn't crank down the windows. She got in the car and said to Dan, "How do you get the windows open?" And Dad said, "You have to say please." So she looks at him and then says questioningly, "Please?" And nothing happens. And then Dad says, "No, you have to say it very nicely." And then she says, "Pretty please?" And the windows go down as my dad surreptitiously pushes the electric window button. The best part of the story for us is knowing that afterwards they both laughed so hard, it brought tears to their eyes. He loved travel and adventure. He seemed to have an uncanny instinct for navigating into trouble, which resulted in many wonderful family adventures. Mom would say, "Dan, are you sure?" And Dad would say, "Tam, you worry too much." When we were in England, when Dad had his fellowship, we traveled all around the countryside. On one of these trips, we went to the castle of Saint Michel, which could be only accessed by foot when the tides were out. Otherwise, it was by boat. Mom said to Dad, "Dan, did you check the tide table?" Dad said in that oft-repeated line, "Tam, you worry too much." 2 hours later, after a glorious visit, we headed back against the rising tides. Dad leading the hapless parade of adventurers, his mother, his wife, and his 3 young children. Afterwards, we draped wet socks on the car and picnicked while laughing about the close call.
Dad was deeply committed to the traditions and values of Judaism. He led more than 50 Seders with the Maxwell House Haggadah, with roles assigned and annotated. My job was the washing of the hands. We were one of the first Havarahs at the temple, along with Judy and Carl Chesler, their children, David and Jeremy, close friends. We were able to celebrate so many years of family Shabbats together and took amazing trips to Israel, beginning with the first when Dad completed the fellowship at Tel HaShomer Hospital in Tel Aviv in the early 1970s. Dad embraced everyone as an individual, but everyone was a member of his tribe. He always looked for an opportunity to embrace you as one of his own. He treated my sister-in-law, Vic's partner Odile, as his son-in-law. I'd like to read a story from one of our closest friends, George Niarchos, which sums up this quality. His beautiful wife, Sherry, a very dear friend, was a patient of Dad's. This is what George said. Naomi, my heart feels for you, Greg and Mom. Though I've shared this story with both of you many times before, it's worth repeating. Sherry and I were kids, 27 years old, when Sherry was diagnosed with lymphoma. I'll never forget the sparkle in your dad's eyes when he learned that in front of him was a Jew and a Greek that were so happily married, knowing that his daughter was dating a Greek boy in DC at the time. He wanted to know everything about how we met, how our families accepted our relationship, what challenges we faced, how two different upbringings were able to make it work. From the very first meeting, we were family to your dad. Whenever we'd walk into his office, there was such a loving vibe felt. Before any medical conversation began, your dad always wanted to hear about us. What were we up to? He had a genuine interest in our lives beyond Sherry's treatment, which always felt like he was caring for one of his children. And because of your dad's care, Sherry beat that cancer and was able to have a beautiful, fulfilled, enriched life together. We were forever indebted to your brilliant, sensitive, beautiful dad. Another trait of Dad's is that he had an eye for beauty, whether it was creating his garden, working in ceramics, collecting Japanese net skis, or surprising Mom with a gorgeous piece of jewelry. Dad always realized that he was very lucky in life. He exhibited on a daily basis. He was filled with joy and love and shared it freely.
And in turn, we realize how incredibly lucky we were to have Dad in our lives for so many years.
Dad, we will carry you in our hearts. We want to thank some incredibly special people who supported Dad and our family through every chapter of our lives. First, we want to thank Rabbi Gail Pomerantz. Thank you for being there for us during this difficult time for our family, as well as in so many moments of joy. You are more than our rabbi. You joined Dad in his Schwartz rounds, and we thought of you too as the compassionate care dream team.
Cantor Siegel, thank you for the beautiful music and for lifting our spirits. We also want to thank Idell Robinson, who's been an integral part of our lives for more than 50 years, and Mark Eric Kuhl, Laverne Markey, as well as Dad's doctor, Peter Siegel. They all provided extraordinary care and support over the last few years and saw Dad for who he is, not his illness.
Finally, we want to thank our circle of friends and family, near and far, that have been such a sense of support and comfort. We will continue to lean on you in the days ahead. Thank you for sustaining us, and please continue to share your stories of our dad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asa, Naomi, Victoria. Your dad had such reason to quell over each one of you. Thank you for your beautiful words. Dan's grandchildren, Sarah, Max, and Elizabeth, Eleni, Aaron, and Talia, and Micah, were the apples of his eye. You meant everything to him. So I'm going to call up Aaron and Talia to represent their clan and talk about their beloved grandfather.
I just want to preface this by saying there are so many tissues here, and they will inevitably be used over the course of this.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Aaron. I'm grandchild number 3 of 7, and I just wanted to briefly share a quick story. One of my favorite memories of Grandpa. It's near and dear to my heart. It took place on me and my cousin Max's 10-year-old birthday trip that my grandparents took us on. And for those who aren't aware, my grandma and grandpa, when each set of the three sets of two, we were all the grandchildren around a year or so apart in age, very close in age. So when one of the sets would reach the age of 10, they took us on a trip to a city of our choice. And me and Max chose New York City. And while we were there, we attended a Blue Man Group show. And for those who don't know the Blue Man Group, they're just like an entertainment show with the very eccentric. They're like wearing blue paint. If you don't know them, you can look them up later. But they're a lot of fun. And I was really excited about it because I knew that they're largely stationed in Las Vegas, and they had a show in Greenwich Village. And yeah, I was really excited about attending. And so we got there, we had very good seats too, I think first or second row. And when we got there, we were very early, thanks to Grandma. And so we were just sitting around waiting for the show to start, and they had these TVs on the sides that were just basically like taking names of random people in the audience from the tickets and just use their names and place them with funny captions or funny little, captions is the word I would use. So like the one example I remember was so-and-so, your car is getting towed outside, we need you to run and rescue it. It said just goofy things to kind of just get people laughing. And I remember like as soon as they started doing that, it was like a couple minutes before the show started, everyone was basically there. My grandpa leaned over, I was sitting next to him, and he told me, I sure hope they don't like pull my name up there. And like 20 seconds later, it said, is there a Daniel Nixon in audience, ? And it said, we've heard that you didn't pay for your tickets. We've been informed. Please report to the ticket office, you cheapskate. And it was so funny because I just remember looking at him. He had like a huge sheepish grin, and he got really red. And it was just sort of hilarious. He like spoke it into existence, and we all had a good laugh from it. Then also, sort of a two-parter of a story. After the show, it was an amazing show. We waited in line to take photos with the Blue Man Group, and when it was our turn to take a picture, I remember my grandpa going over to one of the members and just like complimenting them, like giving like a sincere, genuine like thank you, and like praising the performance. And it's just really funny because there's like a code of silence that the Blue Man Group takes. Like they're never supposed to break silence or character, but the member that he talked to was like, thank you, I appreciate it. And he said it in a very like soft-spoken way too, like he knew he was breaking the code, but it was clearly like something about my grandpa's delivery, his presence, his compassion, his genuinity, and that was just really special. I remember that, and that's just one of many memories that I have of my grandpa that's really special to me. And I just wanted to say I love him very much, and I know he's still going to be with me by my side throughout life, and one day we'll reunite and be together again, and that'll be a special day. Thank you. And then now I am reading a speech on behalf of my other cousins and his grandchildren, Sarah, Max, Elizabeth, and Micah, who unfortunately couldn't be in attendance today. So this is their joint speech. We're sad that we can't be together right now. There's a lot that's been hard about the past year, but not being able to see Grandpa or to celebrate and mourn in person with you all wrenches. Though difficult, our physical separation inspired us to think about what ties us together. Inevitably, so much of it leads back directly to our Grandpa. Every garden we plant, each fish we catch and coffee-rubbed steak that we grill, each dog that we love, every colorful sock in our drawers, and every tweeted coat our friends can never wear as well as he did. Every time we rewatch Ratatouille, each time we sit down for Seder, look for or hide the afikoman, each lap we swim, in every game Miami loses to Boston, just only 2 of the last 6 last year's playoffs. Just wanted to make a note of that. Every cone from the freeze and movie at the Nugget, every time we sing off pitch. There's a poem everyone who visited our Grandpa in Hanover will be familiar with. They have the still north in their soul, the hill winds in their breath, and the granite of New Hampshire is made part of them till death. Most of us never went to Dartmouth, but we all had Grandpa. Even when forced to be apart, we think of him and are reminded of what ties us together.
Now I'm going to read something on behalf of my sister Eleni, who also unfortunately couldn't be here. There are so many special things about Grandpa that I could mention, but today I wanted to touch on something I've come to appreciate, especially with age: the love Grandpa had for Grandma. I think it's clear to anyone who knows them that Grandma and Grandpa were not only life partners, but also best friends who respected and enjoyed each other deeply. Grandpa lit up whenever Grandma complimented his socks, debated him over the correct version of a story, or kissed him on the cheek. He admired her sharpness, marveled at her smarts, laughed at her jokes, and so obviously loved sharing a life with her. As Grandpa's Parkinson's advanced, Grandma's devotion to him and the life that they built together never wavered. She structured her days to maximize quality time with him, joining him for workouts at the JCC, pre-pandemic of course, eating her meals with him during the times of day he was most lucid, and holding his hand through movies so that they were still making memories together. They will always be each other's soulmates. I tell my friends all the time that I hope I'm lucky enough to experience a love in my life like Grandma and Grandpa's, to experience the tenderness and patience, the depth and resilience of their bond. It's inspiring, and I think it's touched us all to witness it, to learn from it. Grandpa, I promise we'll all band together to love Grandma fiercely in your place, knowing though that you'll never really be absent from her. So thank you to all the cousins who gave us speeches to read on their behalf, and we wish you were here with us. This one's from me. My grandpa was so many things all at once. There would not be enough time in the world to go through all of his positive qualities, so I'm going to focus on one of the most foundational parts of his personality, his wit and humor. I have admired my grandpa's constant attention to puns, quips, and punchlines for as long as I can remember. He never missed an opportunity to fill the room with laughter. Over the last 4 years or so, I have documented some of my favorite of his jokes and observations, secretly writing them down on my phone under the table as I made eye contact with him. I needed to make sure I remembered his way of humor forever because it brought so many smiles to so many people. I'm going to share a few of my favorite of the quotes with you today so that we can remember Dan, Dr. Nixon, Dad, and Grandpa as the beacon of light that he was in all of our lives. And please excuse my delivery, my grandpa definitely did it better than I'm about to do right now. So on Grandpa's birthday a few years ago, Grandma yelled across the kitchen, "Dan, you have another call." And without missing a beat, Grandpa said, "It's the IRS or the IRA." When asked how he only occasionally smoked cigarettes and didn't get addicted, Grandpa replied, "Can you imagine rolling up 25 cents of paper and lighting it up? What a waste of money. My DNA doesn't let me do that." Grandma once asked, "What's the difference between a hairstyle and a haircut?" To which Grandpa replied, "About $5,000. One summer in Hanover, Grandma wanted Grandpa to wear a windbreaker because it was raining outside. Grandpa put on a suede jacket instead because, and I quote, "When you're out with style, you stay with style. That's what the pigs say." I still don't know what that one means, but it makes me laugh when I read it. Once when we were watching the news together, an interviewer on CNN asked an analyst, "What do you think North Korea wants?" I thought my grandpa was napping, but behind me I heard his reply to the woman, "A pastrami sandwich." And finally, my nose does not do profile. I hope those of you watching the live stream chuckled from home. I know I've laughed many times as I've reread these, and I thought what better way to celebrate a person than their own words. I love you, Grandpa, and I will always remember you for the witty man that you were.
Thank you so much to all the grandchildren, and particularly to Aaron and Talia for adding some levity and humor to this service, and it wouldn't be a proper tribute to your grandfather without it, so thank you. It's now my pleasure to invite up Dan's nephew, Ivan, to share some thoughts from his brother Harvey and also from himself and his brothers. Thank you, Ivan.
Well, first I'm going to start off with something that my dad, his brother, had to say. My brother was the best brother a younger brother could ever have had. I was always proud of his accomplishments and generosity. He was loved by his wife, his children and grandchildren, his many friends, family, and me. Although we were different in many ways, we found so many similar things. We are ardent readers, loved gardening, fishing, tennis, and had dogs as pets. Over the years, we fished together almost every day. We fished from the Arctic to Belize and everywhere in between. It is the most enjoyable when we were able to take Asa and Andy with us. I will always miss my brother. I can never thank him enough for the care and love they gave me. Brother Harvey. That's from my dad. And this is from us, from his nephews. This is from Andy, me, Ivan, and my brother Brad. And think about all the good times we've had spent with Uncle Dan throughout our lives. All three nephews had good memories to share. While we all have our unique memories, as we talked a few consistent themes and words for all of us. First, growing up in the Midwest, it was always so much fun to come down to Florida and visit Uncle Dan and Aunt Dan. Not only we get to spend time with the family, but it was like a vacation when we came to visit. The house was beautiful, the location tropical, and the water was right outside of the backyard. Every single one of us remember fishing off the dock, looking at the city across the bay, and having fun with the entire family. Our shared love of fishing with Uncle Dan led to many trips to various locations all over the world. But as me always said, I always had a doctor where I can fish on. The second theme that stood out was a share of nature and gardening. Whether it was hiking up in New Hampshire during a summer visit, walking around the Florida house for a guided tour outside, or simply admiring the amazing orchids that Uncle Dan kept. While all enjoying talking about gardening and sharing the common interests, to this day, each of us enjoys life, gardening, and nature as a whole. It remains a major part of our lives. We will remember Uncle Dan when we're working outside on a sunny day, getting dirty, and just thinking about the world around us. The last theme was Uncle Dan's dedication to the knowledge and education. Whenever we visited, there were many thought-provoking discussions sitting around the table. Whether it was Dad and Uncle Dan discussing a book, Andy, Asa, and Uncle Dan talking about cancer research, or Uncle Dan talking to Brad about the meaning of avuncular. For those who don't know, it means relating to an uncle. Well, we all felt like we had something to offer to the conversation. In particular, Andy truly enjoyed talking about his research with various cancerous organizations, several of which Uncle Dan was also involved. With his during career, providing updates on the latest cancer news, sharing stories of old colleagues brought to us closer together during these later years. These are only a few memories, but there are many more that tucked away in our minds. When they force their way to the forefronts of our minds, we'll be able to take a moment, smile, and remember how great an Uncle Dan was to all of us boys. We miss him. We'll never forget him. Miss you, Uncle Dan. Love all of us.
Thank you, Ivan, for those beautiful words on behalf of your brothers and your dad. And now I'm going to call up Asa to share some words from Dan's best friend from Dartmouth, Frank Davidson.
My father graduated from Dartmouth in 1955, which means that the friends that he made there, who were really some of the closest friends he had throughout life, he knew for close to, if not 70 years, which is mind-boggling to me. Frank Davidson was one of his close friends from Dartmouth, and sent words for us to read today. And I'm sorry that to everybody who can't be here, who wanted to be here, it's one of the sad things about COVID, but it's important that you all know that we really feel your love, just as if you were right next to us. So Frank wrote, Dan was a very special friend and my roommate at Dartmouth. He was an English major, decided at the end of his junior year to go to medical school. Thus, in summer school and during our senior year, he took all the hard pre-med courses while I could audit art courses and enjoy myself. We graduated in May, and Dan didn't get into medical school until July. Although last to get into med school, he graduated second in his class, which I actually did not know about until receiving this last night. He graduated second in his class and received highly sought after residency and fellowship positions at Mount Sinai Hospital and New York Hospital. I knew that Dan had met somebody special when he called me in Boston and asked me to check on a girl, Tamara, who was going to Wellesley. 4 years later, I drove to Cleveland for Dan and Tammy's wedding. During the next 60 years, we spent many happy times together in New York City, Hanover, and Miami Beach. Carol and I always looked forward to being in Hanover with Dan and Tammy during reunions and homecoming weekends. I remember cold, rainy afternoons watching Dartmouth football games. Win or lose, Dan, Pete, and I always stayed until the end. In later years, our trips to Cuba, Jamaica, San Francisco, and the wine country with Dartmouth friends were memorable. Finally, I'll always remember Dan's Harris tweed jacket, his bow ties, and his rumpled hat. Dan, you are a class act, and I will miss you a great deal. Love, Frank.
And finally, we will hear from his partner, his medical partner, Dr. Judy Ratson, and Naomi's going to read her remarks.
Hi, Judy, wherever you are. We feel your presence here. From Judy. I'm so sad to be sitting here writing these words of eulogy for Daniel D. Nixon. Dan played such an important part in my life. He accepted me, a woman, as his partner in practice at a time when positions were not that available for women. He was a mentor and a model of how a doctor should care for his or her patients. Dan was kind, smart, and treated people equally, regardless of race, gender, or background. At a time when many physicians were making a lot of money from administering chemotherapy, Dan said, "We charge our patients the cost. They're dealing with enough going through this treatment." He was a genuine, decent, kind individual. He knew how to listen and often gave thoughtful and clear analysis of issues. He was liberal in every sense of the meaning of liberalism, open to new ideas and ways of doing things, open to evolving mores, and yet could be conservative in other areas, such as dress and fiscal issues. He had a wonderful sense of humor and was always able to laugh at himself, something I consider an admirable trait. His love for Tamara, his children and grandchildren, was always at the forefront. He was so proud of each and every one of them. He loved gardening for Naomi, enjoyed discussing medicine with Asa, and was so proud of everything that Victoria had accomplished. Although eulogies are meant to laud an individual's life, I can hardly even begin to sing Dan's praises. They are so numerous. I love Dan, and these past few years have felt the gradual loss of someone who was so dear to me. And now the finality. But I will always remember the young man he was who welcomed me into his practice. I can say goodbye to you, Dan, but you will remain with me in memory forever.
Thank you for all these beautiful words, and each one paid tribute to a different aspect of the wonderful man he was. Victoria touched on this, but to close, I want to just say that Dan's life was filled with adventure. He loved adventure, from the wilds of Vietnam to Costa Rica and the Galapagos with his family, to the Royal Marsden Hospital in London and the Fellowship at Tel HaShomer, and always with his fishing pole in hand. But like that tree at Dartmouth, his roots were deep. Each one of you he loved kept him grounded, stable, and strong. No one more than Tamara. She cared for him so expertly, lovingly, patiently, and as he became increasingly confined by his debilitation, thanks to your loving care, he always maintained his dignity, his sense of humor, and his relationships to people who cared about him. As you all wrote on the tree, he was an eternal optimist, and he made the best of even the most difficult circumstances. In the end, he was surrounded by all of you who love him in person and on phone. He heard your whispers, your songs, your stories, your prayers, and all your messages of love. And like that tree at Dartmouth, a symbol of the righteous man he was, he will continue to shelter and shade you with his legacy of wisdom, his loving kindness, and his compassion. Zichrono livracha. May his memory always be a blessing to all of you. Amen. And now the family has asked the cantor to sing a song from Sweeney Todd, and she will. And as she does, I'm going to come around and just pass out prayer books so that you'll have the words of Kaddish.
Nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around. Nothing's gonna harm you, no sir, not while I'm around. Demons are crawling everywhere nowadays. I'll send them howling, I don't care, I've got ways. Nothing's gonna hurt you, no one's gonna dare. Others can desert you, not to worry, at whistle I'll be there. Demons will charm you with a smile for a while, but in time, nothing can harm you, not while I'm around.
Thank you, Cantor. As we approach our final memorial prayers, I'm going to read a poem that Tam requested. And the refrain is, "We will remember him." So please join in the refrain. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we'll remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. And now I'll invite you all, if you're able, to please rise for the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bameromim, Hamsei menucha nechona, tachat kanvei hashechina. Im kedoshim utahorim, kizaharakim ashirim. Et Nishmat Daniel David Ben Yisrael Yitzchak V'Sara Ruth Shalach Le'olamo Ba'al HaRachamim Yasirehu B'Tzeter K'nafav Le'olamim V'Tro HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Daniel Nixon, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. May those who mourn the loss of Daniel find comfort in the hope that though the dust returns to the earth as it was, the spirit returns to God who gave it. Death is not the end. Those we love have passed through the gateway of the grave into the peace of life eternal. We know that all of us must tread the same path, though we know not when that hour may come. Let us so live that the coming of that hour shall find us unafraid. May our deeds do honor to the memory of our beloved, whom you have taken to yourself. Trusting in your wisdom and loving kindness, we praise your names with words of Kaddish, and you'll find Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayachon v'yamachon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, Bagala uvizman kari v'yamru amen. Yehe shemei rabba mivarach le'alam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kedusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Damiran be'alma v'yamru amen. Yehe shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yamru, amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yamru, amen. May the author of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved here and everywhere with God's blessing of peace. And the final words to our service are, Lech kishlachacha Adonai, go your way, for God has called you. Lech v'Adonai ye'imach, go your way, and may God be with you. V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha, kvod Adonai ya'asvecha, may your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. Hamakom yenachem etchem b'tok sha'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. Now go forth in peace to life. Amen. Thank you all for being with us for this service and for bringing comfort to the family.